everyone, welcome to another video. Today I will be talking about my original character, Daerius. He is another minor character as part of my ongoing original character series, and similar to Lushu, he is also a closed species. I had talked more in depth about what closed species are and how you could go about obtaining a closed species in my previous video featuring Lushu, so if you would like to learn more about closed species and how you can go about obtaining one, feel free to check out that video, which I will link down below in the description as well as on the upper right hand corner of the screen. But basically, Daerius is also a closed species called a Nyap, which is actually really fun to say. It's spelled N-Y-A-P, and I believe it's loosely based off of like a feline or cat design. The Nyap species is a closed species created by the artist Pixel Latte on DeviantArt. And as I had mentioned in Lushu's video, I unfortunately don't feel very connected to characters that I don't create purely from scratch, so I don't have all of the information regarding the Nyap lore and backstory and species information off the top of my head, so I will put a link to the DeviantArt group that talks about all of that information for this species, so if you guys are interested in it, feel free to check out that link so you could read more. But just a very brief recap, a closed species basically means that the artist has created their own species. They might have created their own lore or background for this species, as well as defined what traits the species has. And then there are different ways that you could go about creating a character that belongs to this species, but all of those different ways that you could go about doing so requires the artist's permission. So that's basically what a closed species entails. For me, I had gotten Daerius' character approved through a free make-your-own event, so very similar to Lushu, where the creator was hosting a free event where you can claim a spot and create your own character following the guidelines for species creation. And it's funny because I had created both Lushu and Daerius around the same time. I think it was like beginning of the year, so I guess that's prime time for when artists want to kind of kick off the year doing make your own events to kind of gather more interest and more people to join their group and be a part of their species. So basically, Daerius is a Nyap, and I'd created him through a make your own event. I will put a reference on screen of the design that I had created for him and had submitted for approval. And as you can see, he has a really, at least I think so, I think he has a really neat design. I wanted to go with kind of like a galaxy themed, so I stuck with kind of like dark colors, like lots of grays, blacks, dark purple, dark colored skin, and then I wanted to add kind of like stars and sparkles to kind of give that galactic galaxy look. And I also really like the concept of rune markings, so I also put that throughout his body, as you could see on the reference. And overall, like, I really like his character design, but as I've mentioned in previous videos, I have a really bad habit of creating characters with really detailed and intricate, complex designs to the extent that it's very difficult for me to recreate them accurately. So for example, like Daerius' rune markings, even like around his neck, I think that that's the area where it's most visible. Like, it's nearly impossible for me to essentially do the exact same markings over and over again. So the fact that he has a very difficult design, and on top of the fact that I just don't feel tied to his character, I unfortunately don't draw him a lot. So it was actually really fun to draw him for this series. I will have to say that when I was filming this, it was so mentally exhausting. Like, I think out of all of the characters I have filmed for my OC series, like, his was the most taxing and the most labor intensive, and a huge part of that was just because he has a lot of gradients as well as textures because of the fur that he has. And granted, like, I think gradients look really cool on character designs, and from a digital art perspective, it's fairly straightforward to do gradients. So like I just use the airbrush tool, and you could get a very smooth transition through that when you do digital art. But when it comes to traditional art, it takes a lot more work. And I feel like with alcohol markers, it really depends on the quality of alcohol markers. So for example, Copic markers are great at blending. I mean, that's why they're professional markers. And granted, I do have Copic markers, but with this series, I've been trying to use more of my Ohuhu markers just because they're less expensive, and I don't feel like I'm at the level where I can use alcohol markers that are as pricey as Copics. But even then, like, I feel like these markers blended really well, especially because I only used two colors, like black and purple. And as you can see on screen, I was able to achieve a pretty smooth transition. Granted, I feel like it took a lot more layering and back and forth between the two colors in order to get that nice blend, but overall, like, the end result looked really nice, and so I was really happy about that. But at the same time, like, it was still very tiring, and I don't know why, especially because it's just two colors that you go back and forth. But I think there's also that added level of, I don't know if it's like stress, but it's just like extra pressure when you're filming, and it's like, oh my gosh, like I cannot mess up because there's no Control Z option, there's no undo option. So if I were to mess up, there's only so much I could do to try to salvage it. So I think there was just that level of pressure where I was going into this not really having tried out a lot of blending beforehand and just hoping that it was gonna look good at the end. And I personally feel like it did. It ended up looking really nice. The textures, so like the fur around his shoulders, which is part of one of the traits for this species, as well as his really fluffy tail, I think was another part of him that was very mentally draining for me. I initially was planning to do very basic shading for the fur, but after that I realized that the colors just looked really flat, like there wasn't a lot of pop to it. So last minute I decided to try to add a little bit more shading and to add more textures and definitions, and this also I feel like turned out really nicely at the end. But again, it just took a lot of mental stamina to work through. And I remember that at the time that I was filming all of these, I think I filmed maybe 2 months ago. At the time that I had filmed this, I was doing, I think, 2 videos a day just to try to get my whole OC series filmed and edited so that all I had to do was do voiceovers and then upload the videos. But I just remember that I was just so tired after filming this one that I was like, okay, I am done. Like, I can't do a second video. I'm just gonna take a break for the rest of the day. So Daerius was the only video that I have filmed for that day. But again, like, even though it was very tiring, like, I am just so happy with the way that this piece turned out. I think the gradients turned out really nice. The fur textures came out really nice. And overall, like, the colors, just everything just looked really nice. Even though he has a very limited color palette, I wanted to keep that part simple. Everything just looked how I had envisioned, I think is the best way to put it. And especially for something as time consuming as this, it really felt like all of the mental energy that I was putting into this piece really paid off. So I'm just really happy about that. And in terms of Daerius's personality, so again, he is a minor character, so I unfortunately don't have a lot of stuff fleshed out for him, but I feel like he's the kind of person who would be kind of like sly and mischievous, but like deep down he's a good person at heart. He just might go about things like in a way that's not the most acceptable method, if that makes sense. So that's kind of the feel that I get when I think of him and his character. And I also think he is the kind of person who enjoys collecting very mysterious, like alluring objects, like objects that might invoke like magical abilities, or like forbidden objects or taboo objects or things of the occult, like kind of stuff like that, where there's just this air of like mystery and the unknown. I feel like he would be that kind of person to kind of go about trying to expand his collection of just like these very odd items. But that's pretty much everything for Daerius, and that wraps up our video. I hope that you guys enjoyed and have been enjoying this series so far. I know right now there's a lot of stuff going on in the world, so I hope that you guys are doing okay and staying safe and just taking care of yourselves. So that's pretty much all that I have for today. Black Lives Matter, you guys matter, and you are loved, and I will see you in the next video.